live in an absolutely amazing country where we enjoy so many freedoms that so often we seem to just take for granted. For the simple fact of us gathering here, being able to raise up our voices, being able to raise up our holy book and read from it openly, to be able to sing songs of praise and thanksgiving, is not a freedom that everyone around this world enjoys. So we are blessed that every Sunday we get up and make our way to church and work our way through worship and then go on to whatever lies ahead of us. And oftentimes we do come to take for granted even this one obvious freedom that we have that is not a part of everyone's life. We're given a great many other freedoms as a part of this country, as being American. You might be able to list them. You might not. We all enjoy them, whether we're conscious of them or not. But there is a difference between freedom as Americans and freedom as Christians. I don't mean to intentionally separate the two, that you can't be one without the other, but I am making a difference here for the simple fact that the freedoms we enjoy as Americans tend to fall under the law. They rest in legalism. We have these rules. Here is what we are allowed to do. Here is what we are not to do. That is the way that a society functions. It's a way that a household functions. It's a way that to a greater or lesser degree we all function. If we don't function that way, I think they call us sociopaths. Which is not a really funny thing, but those are the people that have no rules in accord with the laws that we adhere to and abide by as Americans. So we understand that there is a great responsibility placed on us by these laws, and at the same time we are given great freedom through these laws. But there's even a greater responsibility that comes from us, or comes to us, through grace. It's very easy for us to abide by the law and relish the freedom that we have in the fact that here are the rules. Well, if you want, let's take the Ten Commandments. We should do this, we should do this, we should do this, on and on and on. And that then allows us the freedom to live wonderfully full and plentiful lives that in which abundance overflows. And here's the scary part. When we step beyond law, we're stepping into grace. And grace is wild and unbridled. And it might cause some of us to scratch our heads. Because the gospel, what we lift up as Christians, does not ask less of us. It requires so much more. But here's the amazing thing that Paul does. And Paul is not simply an apostle or an evangelist. Paul is indeed a Christian that knows his roots, and he lifts up, he's a theologian that lifts up the fact that what we what is demanded of us is love of neighbor. Love of neighbor that is without qualification, and without any specific type of action or activity being ascribed to. It's filled with grace. Because we often don't know how that love of neighbor is going to work out until it's working out. We might go in with a plan, well, I intend to do this, and let them know that, and of course pray for them, and maybe do whatever I can, and all of a sudden we are absolutely astounded and amazed that grace has turned that upside down, and what we came and expressing as love of neighbor is lost out of our mind, and we have undertaken something totally new and unthought of for these others. That's kind of the scary part. Because it's very easy to get very comfortable with the law and the freedom that it offers, through the legalism that is a part of not only our American heritage, but as well as our Christian heritage. But the aspect of our Christian heritage that takes us beyond the freedom as Americans is recognizing that authentic and genuine freedom is only attained as we live lives in radical obedience to God's will and in radical dependence upon God's grace. Let me paint you a little picture here. Radical dependence upon God's grace. How many of us have spoken words similar to this, that, we need to be ready. We need to have our heart right, our soul right, our life right, because we never know what may come in the next instant. Most all of us have said that. I've heard Jim say it, I don't know, 1,000 times? I don't know. I love you. And it's a simple fact that we don't. And as we live in grace, we can find that we can depend on God in the not knowing, in being unclear or unsure about what the future may hold for us. Because we are loved by God, and in that love, then there blossoms this grace of God's favor, and we are often seen through things that pop up and maybe slap us across the face in our lives, and then carried through and past that. Oh, we've got examples of that here this morning. Miss Kelly. I will give you a clue. If you happen to go over and speak to Kelly, don't go over and go, zzz. I think she's probably had about enough of that. In an instant. But in that same moment, there is that grace that being radically dependent upon God brought her past what could have very easily been simply a fatal situation. And look at her, smiling. She's got her place-kicking boot on. Radical dependence upon God's grace. So often we fight with God on this, in this fact. Because so often we want it our way. How many times have we woken up, set to the day, we know this is the way it's going to run, and there is some curve that comes our way, whether it's a reminder from God or not, I don't know, but I do know that God's grace, as we depend upon it, God's unmerited favor in our lives, sees us through whatever course that day then takes. And it may be absolutely nothing like what we anticipate. Our youngest daughter has come down to visit us with her 2 kids. And I was very excited. Haven't seen them for quite a while. Last time I saw them, I was sick on their couch with the flu. So I was really excited. And they came down here and they brought me a gift, which we have since shared with, I think, most of their cousins and aunts and uncles. And that's been a delightful little head cold. So, you know, it's nice to give and take that way. I'm just glad I didn't give them the flu. But snotty noses and used Kleenexes. But yet, in all of that, we were blessed with a wonderful time of just being together. Not unlike here. Now, I have to admit, my daughter, who is still with us, and the kids, and when they said, please don't make a big thing out of it. I said, no, I won't. I said, I know that everybody's visiting. I'll share that. And also share that you did not feel the necessity to share the head cold with everybody at church. She said, okay, that's good. Just don't make it malaria or something like that. But there's another aspect of that, not only enjoying the radical dependence of God on God's grace, but the radical obedience to His will. Now, I don't know about you, but there are many times when I scratch my head and go, what is that? What is God's will? I think here it can be summed up simply in the commandment that's found in Leviticus, out of which Paul pulled this one sentence. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. If we find that we are in accord with God, that God is indeed in Christ Jesus abiding in us, that we do love God. And as an outpouring of that love, we are called to love our neighbor. When this does not take place, when this freedom is not exercised, folks, everything simply leads to destruction, tragedy, and violence. Paul goes on and says, be careful as you bite and devour one another. Take care that you are not consumed by one another. A lack of love for one another eats us up. But here's the amazing thing. God, in His grace, has placed upon our hearts His will for us to simply love one another. Now, the big question that would take us on towards 10:30 would be, well, how do we do that? Greg rolled his eyes around towards the clock. That was what that was. I don't know how you and I are supposed to do that, how we are supposed to carry out God's will. I do understand that, But what it will actually look like will be one of the most amazing things that God graces you and I with. Maybe it will be a simple, delightful phone call, touching base in the heart of another. Maybe it'll be going over and cutting the tree off of somebody's roof. Maybe it'll be just a positive and uplifting word. That's the wonderful thing that God has in store for us in His amazing grace, is the fact that all of this will unfold as we exercise it, as we come to live it out. That's freedom, folks. Not to be burdened down by slavery, to sin, or to ourselves, but to be open and accepting and appreciating the grace of God and our love for one another. What I encourage us all to do in this coming week, let that work out through your life, through my life, through our lives, into the lives of another in some amazing way.